You've just joined a startup as a CTO or a founding engineer. You think to yourself, finally I can set up things the way I've always wanted to, free of any technical debt or bad decision making. I'm going to create a technical masterpiece. Well, creating a technical masterpiece is only the half of it, if even that. More important is actually to set up the correct organizational processes and structures to ensure that the technical department can scale to meet the needs of the business. So that's what I'm going to take you through today. So first things first, a career framework. I can't stress enough that this is one of the most fundamental things that you should do, and everything else in this video that I talk about will follow on from this. Now you might think to yourself, but it's just me and my co-founder at the moment. Why do I need a career framework? Well, the last thing you want to do is get into the growth stage of a startup, start hiring people, and have those people not know what their roles are, what their responsibilities are, and the organizational structure. And I've seen that so many times. So it really is worth thinking about before hiring. With that being said, think about what your team will look like in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years. From that, derive a rough organizational structure. Go online and find a career framework or an engineering ladder. I've got one in the slide, and actually pick out all the roles that you think you'll probably need in the next couple of years. Write them down along with the responsibilities and your expectations. Once that's done, you'll be ready to start hiring. You've gone through the hiring process, you've made someone an offer, they've accepted, and what do you actually do next? Sit down with that person on their first day and outline your expectations over the next 3 months, 6 months, a year. You're going to reference that career framework that you've already set up. That's also really important if you've made an offer to someone who perhaps doesn't meet all the criteria of the role already. Being this transparent and being this objective allows you to frame feedback in weekly one-to-ones. It also allows you to reference this point in time in any annual reviews or any performance reviews you might have. All that aside, there's some smaller things that you should do when you're onboarding a new hire. Give them a buddy. Make sure that they actually have a point of contact who can help with setting up any kind of questions. Initially, that might be you if you're the only other engineer. Make sure they actually have some work that they can do on their first day. So many times I've seen people being hired in and sit there for the first few days, few weeks. Make sure that the work you're going to give them is actually adequate for their role. There's no point giving a junior the task of setting up an entire new system. Organize one-to-ones for the people that they're going to be working with. You want them to build up rapport, because eventually they'll be able to take care of problems themselves without you. Be empathetic also during onboarding. Send a message on that first day, maybe about 3 or 4 p.m, just asking how it's going and whether you can help with anything. Schedule a meeting on the last day of their first week. It doesn't have to be long. This creates an environment where they can raise any issues and for you to be able to resolve them. You might think, what's the point of all of this? HR should be taking care of that. Well, in a startup, you are probably HR to some degree. So this will all fall into your hands. So once you're in the swing of things and your new hire is onboarded, how do you actually go about managing them? I'd urge you to put in weekly one-to-ones, at least initially. Now obviously you can taper these off as you both see fit, but I definitely think that weekly one-to-ones initially helps with the onboarding process. Make sure that if you have multiple reports, that you don't just do a block of back-to-back one-to-ones. They can be really draining, and you also want to leave about 20 minutes between each of your one-to-ones, not only for yourself, but also in case one-to-ones overrun. Make sure that you're transparent in these one-to-ones and always reference back objectively to the career framework that you had in place. You don't want to get to an annual performance review and list out all the things that are going wrong and surprise the other person. So I definitely think it's always worth being transparent. At the start of each week, write down all the names of your reports and actually start noting down things that you observe. Things that might happen on Monday, you might have forgotten about on Thursdays if that's when your one-to-ones are. And sometimes it's worth actually talking through these things even if they've been and gone. Make sure anything that you've agreed upon within the one-to-one is followed through. So also in your journal, write down things that you've agreed upon. Be patient and obviously listen to people's concerns and act upon them as best as possible. But remember, you can't always fix everything. Your reports might have seen things elsewhere. They might say to you, we want preview branches just the way Netlify have them. Maybe that would be nice, but at this moment in time, you might not be able to action that if you don't have enough resource or if it really doesn't actually help the business. So, annual reviews. Again, this is one where you're going to refer back to your career framework. What you want want to do is get the person's role, create a matrix out of this. On the left-hand side, you want to put the expectations and responsibilities of that role. And on the right-hand side, you want to have a few columns. Exceeds expectations, does not exceed expectations, meets expectations. You want to send that as a 360 feedback form, i.e. to all of the peers that they work with, and also themselves. In the copy that you send to this individual, you'll probably also want to put down 2 other boxes, namely any other comments and their expectations for the annual review. All of this feedback you'll want to collate at least a week before, so that then you can go back to perhaps your co-founder and address any salary increase requests or any role changes. What I would say though is when it comes to salary or title bumps, make sure that these fall in line with what other people in your team are getting paid. You really don't want a situation where a mid-level engineer is getting paid more than a senior. Obviously, this is made a lot more difficult if your team is fully remote and some countries are more expensive than others, but generally speaking you probably also need to think about salary bands within your team and for each role. Performance reviews. Make sure you're clearly communicating why someone isn't meeting your expectations. Again, always refer back to that career framework to make the discussion as objective as possible. The other thing you want to make sure is to let the person know how they can actually achieve your expectations with examples. So you do want to help this person to try and level them up, as it were. Make sure that one of the things that comes out of the meeting is a written document of where the person has failed to meet your expectations, what improvements you expect to see, and by when you expect to see those changes. Put a date in the diary with a meeting on that day, and if they still haven't met your expectations, well, then termination may be on the cards. Remember also that probation period is there to help you and should be extended if in doubt until you figure out whether the person is a good fit or not. So, to summarize, role definitions and a career framework are key. These set the foundations from everything else. They allow you to be objective, they allow you to be transparent, and ultimately they allow your team to scale to meet the needs of the business. Make sure that salary bands are defined, because you don't want a situation where there's massive discrepancies in people's remuneration. When it comes to international or remote teams, there are country multipliers, but again, this topic is actually quite a difficult one. Double down on what works and cut loose what doesn't. What you'll find is that people who drag the team down or people who are low performers will consume a lot of energy from others, whereas top performers, if you invest time into them, you'll seriously reap the benefits. You won't always get it right, so don't beat yourself up about it. Enjoy. Are you looking to grow your team? Why not give Volio a try? Whether it's great engineers, leaders, or just a bit of advice, we're always happy to help.